The seed that builds wealth, why God rewards habits, not wishes. Every farmer who has ever lived has understood something that most people chasing financial prosperity have completely missed. The farmer does not stand at the edge of the field and wish for a harvest. The farmer does not pray once in the spring and then wait at the door through the summer. The farmer plants, day after day, in weather that is sometimes cooperative and sometimes not. Without the certainty of what the season will ultimately produce, the farmer plants. And the earth, because the earth operates according to laws that do not bend for wishes, do not accelerate for urgency, do not respond to desperation. The earth rewards the planting, not the wanting, the planting. This is not a metaphor I am using loosely. This is the central financial teaching of the Jewish tradition, stated in its most ancient and foundational form. The word for charity in Hebrew, tzedakah, comes from the root tzedek, which means justice. Not generosity, not kindness, justice. Because the tradition understood that the person who gives consistently, who plants consistently, who acts in alignment with the laws that govern the movement of provision, that person is not being rewarded randomly. They are receiving the just outcome of what they have done. And the person who wishes, who hopes, who wants intensely but plants nothing, that person is also receiving the just outcome of what they have done. The tradition calls this mida keneged mida, measure for measure. The universe is not cruel, it is precise. And today I am going to teach you exactly what it is measuring. My name is Rabbi Naomi. I have spent 33 years studying the intersection of Jewish spiritual wisdom and the practical movement of money through human lives. The teaching I am sharing today goes back further than any other teaching I have released on this channel. It is rooted in the book of Deuteronomy, refined through the Talmud, deepened through the Kabbalistic tradition, and made practical through the specific household guidance that Jewish families transmitted across generations as a form of lived financial theology. My father taught me this teaching when I was 19 years old, sitting at the kitchen table on a Thursday evening after dinner. He said to me, "Naomi, every financial problem I have ever watched someone fail to solve was a seed problem. Not a money problem, a seed problem." I did not fully understand what he meant for another decade. By the time I did, I had watched enough financial lives, from the outside as a teacher and counselor, to know that he was exactly right. The money problem is almost never the actual problem. The seed problem is the actual problem. And the seed problem has a specific diagnosis and a specific remedy. And I am going to give you both of them today. Before the teaching begins, go to the comments and type the words, "I will plant." Not "I want to plant," not "I am thinking about planting." I will plant. The declaration of future intentions stated in the present tense is a significant act in the tradition. It commits the speaker to a reality they are choosing, rather than a reality they are hoping will choose them. Type it now and mean it, and then come back. You must stay with me for the full teaching. There are 4 principles in what I am about to share, and they build on each other in a sequence that cannot be rearranged. The 4th principle is the one that most changes how you understand the first 3, and if you leave before it, you will have a framework without its load-bearing wall. Stay until the blessing. I want to tell you about a woman I will call Tamar. She was 38 years old when she first came to study with me, a graphic designer who had been freelancing for 9 years, who had genuine talent, a solid portfolio, a reputation among her clients that was genuinely excellent, and who had been unable to move past a certain level of income for the entirety of those 9 years. She was not idle. She was not passive. She worked long hours. She pitched regularly. She upgraded her skills. She tried raising her rates, which produced some clients leaving and others staying, but never resulted in the net increase she was working toward. She had done everything that the practical business world had told her to do, and none of it had produced the trajectory she was trying to build. When she sat down with me for the first time, I asked her one question before anything else. I said, "What do you plant?" She looked at me and said, "I don't understand the question." I said, "Every week, what do you give away?" There was a long pause. Then she said, "I give my time sometimes. I do a little pro bono work for a nonprofit I care about." I asked her if she gave money consistently. She said she gave when she could, meaning when there was a surplus, which there rarely was, and so she gave almost never. I said to her, "This is the diagnosis. You are working at the level of the harvest without doing the work of the seed. And no tradition that has ever understood how provision moves through a life has produced a harvest from that approach." She was skeptical. I respected the skepticism. I asked her to try one thing for 90 days and to observe the result. I am going to give you the same invitation at the end of this teaching. What Tamar experienced over those 90 days and in the 6 months that followed, I will come back to. But first the principles, because without the principles, the practice makes no sense and will not hold. The first principle is this: the seed must precede the harvest. This sounds obvious until you realize how completely the modern financial mind has inverted it. The modern approach to giving, to investing in others, to acts of financial generosity, is almost universally harvest first. I will give when I have more. I will be generous when I am stable. I will begin tithing when my income reaches a level where it does not feel like sacrifice. This is the logic of someone who has confused cause and effect in the most consequential possible direction. The tradition, and not only the Jewish tradition, but virtually every wisdom tradition that has ever thought seriously about the movement of wealth, places giving before receiving with absolute consistency. Not after, before. The Talmud records a teaching from Rabbi Akiva that says a person should give from what they have before they pray for what they need. Not after the prayer is answered, before the prayer is sent. Because the act of giving is itself the prayer made material. It is the farmer placing the seed in the ground before there is any visible evidence of what will grow. The principle is not generosity for its own sake, though generosity is its own reward in the tradition. The principle is alignment. When you give before you have abundance, you are declaring with your behavior, with your actual money, not your good intentions, that you believe abundance is coming. You are acting from the future rather than reacting to the present. And the spiritual law that governs provision recognizes that declaration and responds to it in a way that no wish, no affirmation, no visualization without action ever can produce. The second principle is that the seed must be planted with precision, not impulse. This is where the tradition diverges most sharply from the popular modern approach to generosity and tithing. The popular approach is vague. Give what you can when you feel moved to whatever cause touches you in the moment. The tradition considers this the financial equivalent of scattering seed randomly in all directions and hoping for a harvest. Seed planted without precision produces inconsistent results because the laws governing harvest require not only the fact of planting, but the regularity, intentionality, and proportion of it. The traditional Jewish practice of Meiser, tithing, is not a suggestion. It is a technology. A tenth of income, set aside before anything else is allocated, directed with intention toward specific vessels, toward teaching, toward people in genuine need, toward institutions that carry wisdom forward into the world. The first tenth is removed from the gross, not the net, and it is removed first, before expenses, before savings, before any other allocation. The teachers were specific about this sequence because the sequence is the message. What you allocate first is what you are declaring to be most important. A person who pays every obligation first and gives from what remains is a person whose financial architecture places provision last. A person who gives first is a person whose financial architecture places provision at the foundation. These two architectures produce different outcomes over time, with a consistency that the tradition observed across centuries and that anyone who practices it honestly for long enough will observe in their own life. The third principle is that the seed defines the harvest, not guarantees it, defines it. The quality, the intention, and the consistency of what you plant determines the nature of what can grow from it. A seed planted with resentment, with the feeling that you are giving because you are supposed to, because you heard a teaching and you feel guilty if you do not, because you are treating it as a transaction and waiting to see if the universe delivers, that seed is planted in poor soil. It may grow something, but it will not grow what grows from a seed planted with genuine, freely chosen, joyful intention. The Hebrew word for this quality of giving is besimcha, with joy. And the tradition is not asking you to perform joy you do not feel. It is asking you to cultivate it, to move toward giving from a place of genuine abundance consciousness, even when the material abundance has not yet arrived. To practice the emotional and spiritual posture of someone who has enough to share, even before the account reflects that reality. This is not self-deception. This is the planting of a specific kind of seed, the seed of an abundant identity, and it grows into a life that matches it, not overnight, over seasons, with the patience of a farmer who knows that the earth operates on its own schedule, and that the quality of the planting determines what that schedule will produce. The fourth principle is the one that changes everything, and it is the one that the modern prosperity teaching has most consistently gotten wrong. The harvest is not the end of the cycle. The harvest is the beginning of the next planting. Every tradition that has ever understood agricultural reality knows this. You do not eat the entire harvest. You return a portion of it to the ground as the seed for the following year. And the farmer who eats everything that grows, who treats each harvest as a conclusion rather than a continuation, destroys the capacity of their land to produce future harvests. This is not metaphor. This is the literal mechanism by which multi-generational wealth operates. The families that have maintained prosperity across generations are not the families that earned the most. They are the families that consistently replanted the highest proportion of their harvest, who treated receiving not as an arrival, but as a responsibility. The responsibility to keep the cycle moving, to remain a channel rather than becoming a reservoir, to give from abundance so that the abundance remains dynamic rather than stagnant. The tradition has a word for stagnant money, mamon tamun, hidden money, buried money, and it is not a compliment. Money buried in the ground in the parable of the talents, money hoarded against all future giving, money that has ceased to move through the world. This is considered in the tradition a form of spiritual and financial death. The living money is the money that moves, the money that is given, that is invested, that is offered as seed for the next cycle. And the person who masters this fourth principle, who understands that their financial life is not a destination, but an ongoing agricultural cycle of planting, growing, harvesting, and replanting, that person has broken permanently out of the wish economy and entered what the tradition calls the economy of blessing. Now let me come back to Tamar. I asked her to do one specific thing for 90 days. I asked her to take 2% of every payment she received, not 10%, because I wanted her to begin where she could begin without resistance, and to give it within 48 hours of receiving it to a specific cause she had chosen in advance, with full intention, stated aloud as she transferred the amount. 2%, within 48 hours, to the same destination consistently. With the words spoken, "This is a seed. I plant it from what I have received. I expect it to grow." She was rigorous about it. In the first month, nothing visible changed in her business. In the second month, a client she had not heard from in 3 years reached out with a project that was larger than anything she had done previously. She almost did not take the call because the number was unfamiliar. She took it. By the end of the 90 days, her monthly income had increased by an amount she had not been able to produce in 9 years of effort. She called me and she was quiet for a long time before she said anything. Then she said, "It is not that the giving made clients appear. It is that I became a different person. I stopped operating from scarcity. I started operating from abundance. And that change is visible to people. They can feel it. The business changed because I changed." This is precisely what the tradition predicts. The seed changes the farmer, and the changed farmer produces a changed harvest. The external result follows the internal shift, and the internal shift is produced by the discipline of the planting. I want to speak to those of you who are sitting with a real financial difficulty right now. Not an abstract one, but a specific one, with a number attached to it and a timeline that feels tight. I understand that the farmer metaphor can feel frustrating when the rent is due and the harvest feels very far away. I want to say 2 things about this. The first is that the tradition does not ask you to begin at 10%. It asks you to begin. Tamar began at 2. Others have begun at 1. The percentage matters far less than the consistency and the intention. Begin where you can begin without resentment, and build from there as the harvest grows. The second thing I want to say is that the teachers were aware that the planting to harvest timeline varies. They did not promise a specific number of weeks. What they observed consistently across a very large number of lives over a very long period of time is that the person who plants consistently and with genuine intention does not remain in the same financial position. The position changes. The direction is upward. The timeline is the Earth's timeline, not ours, and our job is to plant well and to trust the ground. If you want the complete framework for building your personal seed practice, including the specific Miser calculation method the tradition recommends, the 4 types of giving vessels and how to choose among them, the weekly planting declaration that keeps the intention alive across the full agricultural cycle, and the harvest review practice that closes each season properly so the next one can begin with full momentum. All of it is available in the resource linked in the description below this video. This is the teaching I consider the foundation beneath every other teaching I have released on this channel, and the resource reflects that. If you begin only one practice from everything I have ever shared here, let it be this one. 3 things before the blessing. First, go to the comments right now and tell me this. What is the one financial wish you have been carrying that has not yet become a habit? Name it. Not the wish. Name the habit it would need to become. The wish is already clear. The habit is where the work begins, and naming it publicly is the first act of making it real. Second, if this channel is not yet part of your regular learning, subscribe now before you leave this page. Every teaching I release here builds on the others, and this one in particular is the root from which the rest grows. I do not want you to receive the leaves without the root. Subscribe and receive it all. Third, if someone in your life is a wisher who has not yet become a planter, press the like button for them right now. Your action is itself a seed, a small act in the direction of someone else's breakthrough. That is how the tradition works. That is how it has always worked. One person plants, another person harvests, and the one who planted the first seed receives, in ways they did not plan for, the harvest of the one who grew from what they gave. May your planting this week be the beginning of a harvest you have been waiting for longer than you deserve to wait. May the discipline of the habit replace the exhaustion of the wish, and may you find in that replacement not sacrifice but relief. The deep relief of a farmer who has finally put the seed in the ground and can feel the earth receive it. The ground is ready. You are ready. Plant now. Shalom.